The story begins in a remote village, where a remarkably beautiful baby girl is born. Everyone in the village proclaims her to be the most beautiful infant they have ever seen. However, one day she falls gravely ill, and the local healer predicts she may not survive for long. Desperate to save their daughter, the child's parents bring her to a reputed witch, said to be capable of curing even the deadliest maladies. Before granting any cure, the witch demands that the parents entrust themselves to the darkness. In a moment of profound fear and desperation, the father consents. Once the illness is lifted, his child returns to perfect health. But the witch bestows a special divination power upon the girl. Over time, as she grows older, the girl discovers that she can foresee futures. Yet every destiny she predicts invariably ends in tragedy. Each day, her power strengthens, fueled by the witch's gift. Eventually, her abilities take a darker turn, and she begins using them to harm others. One terrible day, she uses her powers to control her own father's mind, forcing him to take his own life. In horror, the villagers unite and decide to abandon this frightening child deep within the wilderness. They cast her away, hoping never to encounter her again. Clever and unnaturally strong, the girl manages to survive on her own, and her fate remains unknown. Years later, two siblings named Gretel and Hansel live in another village. Gretel, a 16-year-old girl, is devoted to caring for her 8-year-old brother, Hansel. Their bond is exceptionally strong, forged by the difficulties they have faced since losing their father and slipping into harsh poverty. Hoping to help her mother financially, Gretel attempts to find work as a house servant. Unfortunately, the would-be employer is deeply inappropriate, prompting Gretel to reject the position. When she tells her mother about the disturbing situation, the mother grows furious and orders both Gretel and Hansel to leave the house, claiming she can no longer provide for them. With no other options, Gretel and Hansel set off into the forest, feeling lost, hungry, and cold. One night, exhausted from their search for shelter, they stumble upon an empty hut and decide to stay there until morning. Their rest is short-lived. A strange, wild figure appears out of the darkness, screaming and lunging at them. In a moment of desperate luck, a hunter comes to their rescue, swiftly fending off the terrifying assailant. The hunter then invites them to his own dwelling, offering them food and a place to sleep for the night. Over supper, the hunter advises Gretel and Hansel to travel to a place he calls the Forester's Settlement, where they may find work, shelter, and provisions. The journey, he warns, will require them to travel 2 full days and nights. At daybreak, Gretel and Hansel continue their trek. While wandering through the depths of the forest, Gretel begins hearing eerie whispers, "Follow me," and repeatedly catches glimpses of a woman dressed in black. Local rumors suggest that a fearsome witch named Hulda haunts this woodland, luring children in order to devour them and preserve her youth. Unaware of the truth behind these tales, Gretel and Hansel press on. Their hunger eventually compels them to consume some strange mushrooms, causing vivid hallucinations. Caught between their confusion and the hallucinatory effects of the mushrooms, the siblings notice a tantalizing aroma wafting through the trees. Following the scent, they come upon an odd house situated in a small clearing. Desperate for food, they approach. The place appears mysterious, possibly menacing. After knocking on the door and receiving no answer, Hansel discovers a small window he can pry open, allowing him to sneak inside. Inside, he finds a table laden with all sorts of rich, delicious food, which he hastily begins to gather. From her vantage point outside, Gretel sees Hansel rummaging around, but also notices a frail-looking old woman standing directly behind him. Alarmed, Gretel tries to shout a warning. Unable to force her way in, she picks up a large stone, attempting to break the door open, but to no avail. Moments later, the old woman steps out of the house with Hansel in tow. She introduces herself as Hulda. Unaware that Hulda is actually a witch, Gretel briefly explains their plight. After their father's death, their mother, facing desperate poverty, expelled them from the home. Pitying their misfortune, Hulda invites both children to stay with her for the time being. That night, Gretel has a haunting nightmare. Startled awake, she cannot shake the unsettling feeling it leaves behind. The next morning, she and Hansel share breakfast with Hulda. Hansel eats voraciously, while Gretel, troubled by persistent dread, barely touches her meal. Eager to repay their hostess, she offers to assist with daily chores. Hulda observes Gretel's pale and uneasy appearance, remarking that Gretel seems feverish. She then brews a strange concoction for Gretel to drink, promising that if she consumes it, she will awaken the next day transformed into a stronger version of herself. Despite the ominous ring to these words, Gretel drinks the potion. That night, she is once again tormented by bizarre, vivid dreams. In one dream, she stands in a dim space draped with cloth. A whisper prompts her to descend into Hulda's cellar. There, several bodies lie on a table, covered by tattered sheets. Gretel lifts a sheet and screams in terror before jolting back to consciousness. Horrified, she wakes Hansel and insists they leave immediately and continue on to the forester settlement. She confides her growing suspicion about the house, pointing out how odd it is that Hulda always has fresh food in such a desolate place. Gretel senses something evil lurking there. Convinced that lost souls might be trapped beneath the floorboards, Hansel, however, refuses to go. He has grown too fond of the seemingly endless banquets and comforts Hulda provides. The next afternoon, Hansel wanders into the forest to practice with a small hatchet, noticing strange pentagram symbols etched into tree trunks, a sign often associated with witchcraft. His suspicion of Hulda begins to rise. Meanwhile, Gretel explores the house and stumbles upon a hidden door. Curious but interrupted by Hulda's summons, she has no chance to investigate further. Instead, she follows Hulda into the kitchen, where the old woman attempts to teach her the basics of witchcraft. Sensing Gretel's latent powers, Hulda encourages her to dabble in potion making and wield a wooden staff. Intrigued, Gretel tests her newfound abilities, steadily becoming more enraptured by them. That evening, Hansel pleads with Gretel to leave at once, confessing his growing fear of their hostess and her strange home. By now, however, Gretel has become enthralled by magic and refuses to go. She announces her intent to stay, hoping to learn more, believing she can use this knowledge to do good. Frustrated by Hansel's whining, Gretel loses her temper and drags him away from the cottage's entrance. Then, in a moment of alarming coldness, she abandons him outside, paying no heed to his terrified cries for her to come back. The unsettling effect of Hulda's potion seems to have changed Gretel's very nature. Alone in the dark, Hansel glimpses a woman in black, silently beckoning him deeper into the woods. Unable to resist, he follows her, as though entranced. The next morning, Gretel wakes up to find that Hansel is gone. She initially believes it was all a dream, only to realize the horrible truth. She truly has cast him out. Shocked by her own cruelty, she searches everywhere, but cannot find him. She asks Hulda for help, but the old woman dismissively calls Hansel a useless burden, urging Gretel not to worry. Later that night, Gretel returns to the hidden door she found earlier. Beyond it, she discovers a path leading into the cellar, exactly like the haunting visions in her sleep. Venturing down, she sees Hansel seated against the wall, gazing into space with hollow eyes. She rushes over, but he is unresponsive, clearly under Hulda's control. Suddenly, Hulda appears, no longer in her frail disguise, but as a tall, radiant woman with flowing black hair, her skin adorned with cryptic tattoos. It becomes clear that she has masqueraded as a crone to lure in unsuspecting children and devour them, feeding on their flesh to sustain her vitality and power. Before Gretel's astonished eyes, Hulda reveals a basin of children's entrails collected from her earlier victims. Transforming these remains into sumptuous pies and pastries, she has deceived Gretel and Hansel into unknowingly feasting on human flesh. Reeling in horror, Gretel tries to compose herself, pretending she has not realized Hulda's true nature. Hulda then announces that she must leave briefly and exits into the forest, resuming her youthful form. Out among the trees, she vomits uncontrollably, a sign her powers are faltering and that she must consume another victim, Hansel. She has no intention of harming Gretel, though, for she sees in Gretel a potential apprentice and wants Gretel to become a witch just like her. Once Hulda is gone, Gretel devises a plan to rescue Hansel. When Hulda returns, Gretel offers her a cup of tea laced with sleeping herbs. Sensing treachery, Hulda questions her, but Gretel remains evasive, demanding Hansel's release. Hulda refuses, insisting that Gretel must embrace a darker path. She then reveals her own past. She was the mother of the very child featured in the film's opening, a little girl blessed with immense power who eventually murdered her own father. Enraged by her daughter's cruelty, Hulda abandoned her deep in the forest, hoping to forget her. Yet the wicked power that consumed her child slowly took hold of Hulda as well, until she transformed into a devourer of children. As the memory fades, Gretel finds herself bound to a table in the subterranean chamber. Hulda, wielding her staff, instructs Gretel to cook Hansel and feast on him, promising that the act will awaken Gretel's full witchly potential. Summoning every ounce of her courage and skill, Gretel telekinetically gains control of Hulda's staff. The staff shoots across the room, pinning Hulda by the neck against a wall. Flames leap wildly from the hearth meant for roasting Hansel, engulfing the helpless Hulda. Screaming, she burns to ash in seconds. With Hulda gone, Gretel frees Hansel from his trance and sends him safely back to their old home, preferring to remain behind in the witch's lair. Having tasted the power of sorcery, Gretel yearns to harness it for benevolent ends, hoping to break the cycle of darkness. As Hulda's spirit vanishes, the house grows quiet. All the children's souls trapped within are at last released, drifting into the night air. A calm settles over Gretel, who feels relief that these spirits are finally free. But as the scene closes, Gretel notices her fingertips turning black, the same corruption that once marked Hulda. And so the film ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.